Alright, hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I posted, but like a lot of you, about 2 weeks ago I picked up my copy of the 2024 Player's Handbook, and since then I've just been ripping through it. I'm absolutely addicted. I haven't even played a video game in 2 weeks. That's how much this thing's been digging into my time. But yeah, so it's like jam-packed with all these changes to the core rule set, the 12 core classes, brand new subclasses, revamps of old subclasses that had come out. I appreciate a lot of the changes. It kind of feels like a good refresh to the game since, after 10 years, some aspects of it had been getting to, at least for me, a little bit stale. So anyway, here in no particular order are 10 of my favorite changes in the 2024 Player's Handbook. So first off are the new actions that are listed in the first chapter of the book. There's the influence action, which is for social checks, either charisma with humanoids or wisdom with animals. There's the magic action, which is like cast a spell, use a magic item or a magical feature. There's the search action, which is making a wisdom check. There's the study action, which is make an intelligence check. And there's the utilize action, which is using a non-magical item. You can do all these things before. This isn't like new content, but it does tie a specific action to those things that you want to do in game. So I think this is going to clear up a lot of situations that I've seen at the table as both a player or a DM, where you have a character who wants to, talk to an NPC during combat, or wants to, try and like calm down a wolf that's attacking their campsite. Before you would get these kind of little situations where the DM would be like, yeah, you can do it. The player's like, is it an action? Maybe it's a bonus action, maybe it's a free action. So this just kind of smooths it out a lot, which I think in play is going to be really, really great. Another change is actually to a feat that I've looked at a lot over the years. I've only ever taken in one campaign, and that's the defensive duelist feat. So just like a lot of theory crafters and character builders, I've always loved the shield spell ever since the Player's Handbook came out in 2014. +5 to your AC for an entire round. If you're a low AC character, it's enough to put you in line with like the high dex characters or the plate wearing characters. If you're a character who already has a high AC, it almost makes you like unhittable for a round if you're able to get up to that like 24 to like 28 AC range while the spell's up. So I always tried to squeeze it in on every build that I could. For the same reason, I was drawn to defensive duelist, letting you add your proficiency bonus to your armor class against a hit. But since it was only one hit as opposed to the entire round like shield, it didn't really see as much play. But in the new version of the rules, it lasts for the entire round until the start of your next turn, so it's exactly the same as shield now. Admittedly, it's your proficiency bonus instead of just a flat +5, so for most of the game it's less until that very final sphere of play at level 17 plus where it's actually better. But anyway, now I'm going to be using this in a lot of my dexterity-based melee builds. I might even throw it into like a strength build if I'm for some reason using like light weapons, finesse weapons rather. So yeah, I think it's a great change. Speaking of feats, another change that I'm a big fan of is the removal of the sharpshooter and the great weapon master -5 to hit in exchange for +10 to damage. These two feats were everywhere in damage builds. When you would look online and check out, most optimal damage builds in the game. And it was fun using them for a while. It's a little bit of gamble, -5 to hit, +10 to damage. But it just got a little stale after seeing this for 10 years. So I'm excited for the new changes to those two feats. Another combat-oriented change are the new grapple rules. So in the past, grappling was a contest. It would be an athletics check versus a dexterity, acrobatics, or strength athletics check. Now it's more in line with other effects like spell saves, battlemaster effects, and Monk's stunning strike, in the aspect that it's a DC that your target has to beat. So no more, doing a contest as an 18 strength character and only rolling a 1 so you can't grapple somebody. Now it's a nice consistent DC. So I'm a big fan of that change. So the next thing from this book that I'm extremely excited about are the weapon mastery properties. I'll admit it, I am a melee build junkie. My first ever D&D character was a battle master fighter. My first World of Warcraft character when I was like 8 years old was a warrior. In my 10 years of playing this game, I can probably count on one hand the number of ranged characters that I've played, and I wouldn't even need all 5 fingers. So I'm definitely at my happiest when my characters are covered from head to toe in a big suit of armor, surrounded by enemies, just swinging a massive two-handed weapon, or sometimes a one-handed or a shield. You know, I'm not that biased. But pretty much this play style never got old for me. I'd read on like Reddit threads and YouTube comments that 5th edition martial characters are boring, and I could never really relate to that sentiment, but it was definitely true that the rotation was a bit repetitive. You know, you would move into melee, you'd swing, if you hit, you'd roll damage, and then you'd pretty much just end your turn. So when I first opened my new PHB to the weapons section, I saw half a page of weapon properties. I was on cloud 9. There's 8 mastery properties in all, and the additional effects they grant you cover a pretty wide range. Some of them give you additional attacks under specific circumstances. Some of them apply force movement, knocking creatures prone, some debuffs as well, etc. I'll be covering all these effects in depth in a later video, but suffice it to say that martial characters are about to get a lot more engaging, which is just good news for me. You'll be seeing a lot of mastery properties on this channel. I'm probably going to be building characters around specific ones, so I'm excited to get into that. Next, another character build point is that backgrounds matter now. So one of the biggest changes to character creation in the 2024 PHB is the importance of backgrounds. Prior to this book, backgrounds would grant you like a couple skills, possibly a language, and a feature that almost never came up. Now, in the 2024 PHB, they determine your ability scores, and they grant you an origin feat. So suddenly these backgrounds went from like an afterthought in character building and theory crafting to one of the most important choices you'll make for the entire build, right next to your class and your race. A big reason I love this is because I've always been a fan of options that allow a character to take a feat at level 1, and now every character gets this option. I've seen many D&D enjoyers speak to the limiting factor of this mechanic, because the backgrounds now determine your ability scores. So some classes are going to feel barred from choosing certain backgrounds, or kind of shoehorned into choosing specific ones, because those ones do or do not grant ability scores that they would find useful. Like, for instance, if you're playing a wizard that for your backstory you want to say that he served in the military, choosing the soldier background is going to grant you almost nothing beneficial, because you're not going to care about the strength, dex, or con really. So you might be better off choosing a mental background like sage or scribe. To this I would say, when it comes to character creation, flavor's free. You know, go ahead and take the more efficient background and just adjust your character's backstory to include all the elements that you desire. For example, maybe you want to play a wizard who served in the military, like we said. You could take the sage background and say that the academy that you studied at was actually a military academy, like West Point, or that you served as a scribe as a teenager and picked up those skills before coming of age and joining the military. So again, just like I always tell players at my table, flavor is free. So make it sound however you want it to, and then pick the mechanics that you want to use for your build. So speaking of feats, since the backgrounds now give feats, another thing that's really awesome is that all general feats refers to feats that you can take after level 4, basically the feats that you'll be using your ability score improvements for. All these feats are half feats. Half feat was a term that we used in 2014 for a feat that granted both an ability score increase, but only a +1 instead of the +2 that you'd get for not taking a feat, as well as some features. So this was really nice if you had an odd ability score number. If you had like a 17, you wanted to get that 18, but you still wanted to get like some cool features, you would take a half feat. Now, all general feats are half feats, so anytime you want to take a feat, you're still going to be able to increase your ability score a little bit. So if you plan your character the right way, like at character creation, if you take a 15 and then put your +2 into it, then at level 4 you're going to be able to grab a feat and still get your modifier up. So this is really nice. You're not going to have to sacrifice your ability score growth in your main stats to start loading up on feats and features. So this is really exciting. So another thing is that unarmed divine strikes are now possible. So the Paladin's Divine Strike feature got some pretty heavy changes. The community is all over the place on this. Paladin mains are upset. People who don't play Paladin but thought they were overpowered are pretty happy. Overall, it's definitely a nerf. It's less powerful than it was. So basically what they've done to change it is that Divine Strike is not a feature anymore, it's now a spell. And that spell requires a bonus action to cast. So because it requires a bonus action, you cannot use it multiple times per turn, of course, because you only get one bonus action. You used to be able to smite on, every single one of your hits. Depending on your build, you could have upwards of like 3 or 4 hits, attacks as a paladin. So it can only be used once per turn, and it's now a spell, so in some corner cases it could be countered. I don't really see many DMs throwing out counter spells, but if your DM's one of those who loves counter spelling, he's now going to be able to counterspell your Divine Strikes. I think overall, this is good for the balance of the game. Divine Smite was basically the premier Nova ability in the game. It's probably ended millions of encounters earlier than the DM expected over the lifespan of this game. I prefer longer combats, get at least like 4 or 5 rounds in instead of ending it on round 1 or 2, so I'm a fan of this change. One good thing about the way they've worded the rules is that you can cast the spell immediately after hitting with a melee attack and have it apply to that attack. So you can still do the hold on to your smites until you crit, that way you can double all the additional radiant damage. That part of it's not gone. But one positive change is that you can now smite with unarmed attacks. You used to have to hit with a melee weapon, now it's just when you hit with a melee attack. So I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z. I've always wanted to do a Super Saiyan build, so keep your eyes on the channel because we're going to be doing a Super Saiyan Paladin at some point. Speaking of strikes, the cantrip True Strike got some pretty heavy changes. In the 2014 Player's Handbook, it was always pretty much a joke. You could spend an action to gain advantage on your next attack, which is just strictly worse in all ways than simply making 2 attacks. So the spell was hardly ever used, but this new version of True Strike is more in line with Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade. You make an attack with the weapon as part of the casting, and the damage scales with normal cantrip scaling. And even better than Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade, you can use, you have to use your spellcasting ability modifier to make the attack, instead of strength or dex. This spell is on almost every class's spell list, except for Druid and Cleric. And for those who don't have it, you can always grab the Magic Initiate Origin feat to pick it up. This just makes Gish builds a lot more accessible, so you'll definitely see it in a lot of builds I'll be doing on this channel. And last but not least, the armor proficiency feats. They no longer require the lower armor type. So in the past, heavily armored and moderately armored, if you wanted to take either of those feats to get heavy armor proficiency or medium armor proficiency, you would need to have the lower armor type. So light armor for moderately armored and medium armor for heavily armored. It was kind of like you had to grow through the armor types. You had to get light armor proficiency, then medium armor proficiency, then heavy armor proficiency. So if you were like a wizard or a sorcerer, somebody who didn't start with armor proficiencies, and you wanted to eventually wear plate, you'd have to dip 3 feats into that feat progression. That's 12 levels just to get up to that heavy armor. Of course, you could always multi-class into like, a war cleric to grab heavy armor proficiency, or you could start as a fighter or a paladin. So it wasn't impossible, but now it's just much easier. The feats no longer require any other proficiency. You can pick up heavily armored and immediately be proficient in heavy armor. So that's really exciting. I always want to make like heavy armor wizards, so I'm definitely going to be using that. All of our, plate mail wearing caster knight dreams are a lot more accessible now, so that's exciting. And yeah, those are 10 of my favorite things in the new 2024 PHB. All in all, I'm very excited to start building some characters with this new content. It feels like a refresher course. I don't have to play a different game. I can keep playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that I love, but I'm getting some new ways to look at it, new ways to approach character creation, a new take on some subclasses. So I'm really excited about that. Let me know what you guys think about the new book. I'd love to see what everybody noticed. I haven't gone through every page yet, but I've definitely been hitting the highlight points that I want to see, the classes I like. I've been reading about the feats, I've been reading about the weapons. So let me know what parts of the book are catching you guys' attention. Stay tuned, because next I'm going to be making an original character build for each of the 12 classes. No multi-classing, using only content from this PHB. So if that kind of content appeals to you, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all next time.